Well, I would say there's a lot of things still going on. For some people, they are beginning to regroup and reach a little bit more movement towards what a normal life has been. But for many people, there still hasn't been enough change yet. They're still reacting to changes in their social situation, their economics, their just stresses and isolation. So a lot of people are still having a hard time.
When it comes to isolation, at least for me, it's like I still go to work and still go out and do some grocery shopping and that kind of thing. But it's the idea that I can't do a lot of stuff that a lot of times makes me feel really isolated. It's like I am isolated a little bit, but it's more the idea that I'm isolated that's getting to me.
Absolutely. It's that sense of emotional and social isolation that I'm still finding is having the biggest impact on people. Our way of life has been disrupted, and that sense of control is really important for people to feel good about themselves and good about life. And people have felt very, very helpless over the last year, and it makes it worse when we feel isolated. We're not getting all the hugs we need. We're not getting all the face-to-face contact that helps us feel better and calms our anxieties. So that emotional isolation is what people really have to work with and step out of their comfort zones as much as possible to give the connection you need, to ask for connection. And that's uncomfortable for a lot of people, but everybody needs it, so this is what everyone's going through. So I just encourage people, hey, everybody's feeling this. There's nothing weird about you. This is what's happening, and you are noticing.
I read something recently I thought was really interesting, and that was they did some studies of people who were forced into isolation or had to be isolated for a year or so. And they found that when they kind of came out of that isolation, they actually had some cognitive changes that they had actually changed and not in a good way.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with that study, but any kind of deprivation, prolonged deprivation, whether it's food or air or social contact, we're not designed for that. And so I have looked at some research that looks at how people who are still managing to keep a positive outlook, studies on resilience. Those are the things that I thought maybe would be interesting to your listeners, because it's how we keep moving forward. Because I have thought about, too, how fast are people really going to regroup as this pandemic and the restrictions lift? We're not going to suddenly snap back to our previous psychological and social functioning. It's going to be a process, even when the health issues are gone. So I have some suggestions for people of how to stay as mentally and socially healthy as possible.
That sounds great.
Okay, good. So the studies on resilience, which is people who are able to bend and not break through the stresses of life. And they're actually finding older people are better at this. So hooray for aging. But people who are more proactive versus being passive or reactive. And by proactive, that means taking a hopeful attitude and taking steps to move forward. If you're too passive, you're waiting for something to change, you're hoping for something to change, and life doesn't work very well that way. And people who are reactive, they get irritated, they get anxious, they get impulsive. But that's not a problem-solving approach. It's also still important to incorporate leisure and exercise. They're finding that people who use meditation, who journal, or do any kind of expressive art, or a lot of people are cooking, that it's tapping into kind of your creative outlets, which are very life-promoting and life-giving. And then, whatever creative things you have to do to maintain your support system, texting. I'm encouraging people who aren't familiar with technology to learn to use a tablet or something so you can get some FaceTime. Things are lifting so that you can do more outside again. But the other thing about resilience is that people who are resilient accept their emotions and process their emotions. They don't give up. They don't wait for someone else to help them. They don't pretend they're doing better than they are. They don't try to avoid it through alcohol, drugs, or some kind of reckless behavior. So these are the things that seem to contribute to positive resilience. And also, if you can draw on your faith, a lot of people were raised with some kind of faith. If you can draw on that, you can pull things from God that you can't get from people right now. And I also remind people, if you don't have hope right now, you can borrow somebody else's. Maybe someone else is doing okay today. I mean, chances are you can borrow from an inspirational speaker or a radio program or a television program. So there are days you need to borrow somebody else's hope. Borrow that for a while until you've got your own.
This is Dr. Toni Cooper. Thanks for listening. If this helped you, check out my other videos on YouTube, my books on Amazon, or check out my website to find out about speaking engagements.